What's something from the 90s you miss? Walking 20 minutes to a mate's house, knocking his door, then finding out he's not in. It was like rolling the dice. Pre 911 airports. Being social with people felt so different and authentic. My friends would sometimes just drop by to see if I was home to say hi. We could pick up the phone and have hour-long conversations. It felt like text message cheapened that. The lesser dependence on technology seemed to cultivate more genuine friendships, but that was just my experience. I miss not being able to be reached, or being able to reach people. Back then you'd call your friend and it would ring somewhere in their house. If there was no one there, which was common, you'd shrug and just carry on your day. If you just wanted to chill out on your own, you'd just not answer the phone. Now, everyone knows people are never without their phones. I've had people pissed at me because I took an hour to reply to a text. The innocence of the time. We still played outside but had some awesome multiplayer games that you played together in the same room. The world seemed to be heading for better and better things. Then 2001 happened. Renting movies at Blockbuster as a family event. It was special and fun. We don't have any streaming or cable. Andy like it that way. But I wish I could still have that Blockbuster excitement. I remember feeling good about myself. If you were good at something, people would let you know that, and you also always knew that one kid who was exceptional at a specific game, that teen who could do awesome tricks on the skate, or a friend who had the most beautiful handwriting you've ever saw, and other things like that. That was special to you because they felt that they meant something, and they actually did, because you could be watching that level of ability for the last time on your life. Today everything has been mastered by a lot of people constantly displaying it on the internet. We have 24/7, one click away, video footage we can play over and over of them being incredibly awesome on it, and I think it frustrates people. You're never really satisfied on what you're doing because deep down you know you'll probably be just another one in 7 billion. And you're not really paying attention to people anymore either, because it really doesn't matter. Whatever it is that they're doing, you can watch someone doing it better on the internet how many times you want. Anyway, things used to mean something. I miss that. I miss the lack of interconnectivity. Like, my summer camp friends were different from school friends, and I didn't really see my summer camp friends outside of July and August. Everything was distinct. When I went from Western New York to New Jersey to see family, it was basically like being on another planet. I think I like everything being more connected, but that sense of distinctness is something I miss. For me, it's affordable housing and just generally affordable living. There was a time when my kid could have moved out and rented with roommates or even on his own, but it's very hard for young people to start out with the current condition. The internet being made up of AOL chat rooms instead of just being Reddit, Facebook, Twitter. Actual 90s aesthetic. It was extreme and alternative. Not family-friendly, wacky, or dystopian like a lot of people think when they see an *80s aesthetic. Example. The entire aesthetic of Nickelodeon in the 90s. Slime and extreme shit. Colorful, translucent electronics. Friday night at Blockbuster renting movies for the weekend. Being considered smart, not weird, for refusing to make your IRL identity known online. Mean people suck stickers everywhere. Now it just seems like there's only mean people everywhere. No social media bullshit. Slap bracelets. Just being perfectly content slapping your wrist for hours on end. It was a simpler time. When people who posted meaningless bullshit on the internet were considered weirdos instead of celebrities worth building a cult around. Sit-in Pizza Hut. I was on vacation in the mountains upstate and they had one in town. I got to have pizza in an actual Pizza Hut for the first time since the late 90s, early 2000s. We had one outside of town and then that closed, and they made a to-go one that ended up also closing. Now I can have one of the local places or Papa John's or Domino's. The Target nearby does have the mini Pizza Hut pizzas and some of their appetizers. It's hardly the same as getting it from a Pizza Hut itself. I didn't expect this to get any likes or responses. Since it has the idea to contact Pizza Hut and ask if they would open one near me keeps seeming better. I have enjoyed reading the responses, all of them, and seeing so many others having similar thoughts and feelings towards the same franchise. Video games that aren't online and not having to sign into 3 accounts to play any game. I have my computer set to manually connect to the internet. I still have to sign into Steam to play a game that isn't dependent in an active connection. Thankfully there is an offline mode for Steam, but I shouldn't have to sign in the first place if the game doesn't require a password. The internet. Post-90s folks. You've got no idea. It was just so different. Web 1.0 was a wild west. Mystery. Not having read everything. The feeling that anything could happen. Because you haven't learned, read, seen so many things. Things being super fresh. How uninhibited, freshly uncensored and creative people were because they weren't constantly preoccupied with their social media presence, being attacked online. People diminish their energy now tremendously because of social media. It isn't even close to the same universe. People pretend not to be uptight and suffocated in that way. To pretend to vibe, but it will never stop looking put on to me. Being able to act goofy without having anyone record it and share with the world. No social media. Not always being available. Friends just randomly stopping by your house. Much less political divisiveness. During the 90s, I was aged 17 to 27. So, those were some good years for me. My oldest was born in the early 2000s, so when I look back at the 90s all I remember is freedom. Free from most adult responsibilities. Free from social media. Free from bullshit politics. They were there for sure, but you literally had to look for them. Lol. Free from a general miasma of fear coming from the media. When I think back, all I remember is sunshine, the lack of a weight bearing down on my shoulders all the time and the sweet sounds of amazing music. While I miss it, I am just grateful that I got to experience it. Hearing rock and roll on the radio that wasn't the same old classic rock. Full-size frosted strawberry Pop-Tarts. They're, like, half the thickness these days. That and eating them while watching back-to-back episodes of Saved by the Bell on Saturday mornings. Good times. Good. The original release of Pokémon cards. Those were the fucking best. My niece is big into Pokémon now, and she just got a shitload of cards for her birthday. Made me want to start collecting them again, but I look up the packs from my youth and their astronomical prices. Ah well. It's called #, not hashtag. I miss the internet being fun and optimistic. I genuinely feel like the internet has gone from the most important and greatest achievement of humanity to something that might have been a mistake. During my lifetime it's really sad because a global communications network should be a great thing for everyone. The excitement about the internet when it was all new and mysterious. That honeymoon is way over. Clearly Canadian sparkling water. It came back not long ago but was limited release and I could never get any. The world being so much smaller. Sure, there are a lot of really great things about being able to talk to anyone, anywhere at any time, but the appreciation of how big and impressive the world really is because of how hard it was to contact people in different countries and the bonds you formed with people in your closer community as something that is gone forever. Arcades. Big, noisy arcades, full of actual video games, whose graphics were 20 times better than what you could get at home. Family-owned convenience stores, diners, burger joints, ice cream parlors, cafes, bookstores, delis, etc. Even small neighborhood grocery stores. And independent music venues. Seems like I'm talking about the 50s, but in the 90s these places still existed. In my hometown most of them are completely gone and were replaced by generic corporate chains or condos. The ones that are still around are struggling to stay afloat and compete. I'm glad I got to enjoy them while they existed but also realized how much I took them for granted. Optimism. It was a pretty happy decade. The Cold War was over. The economy was booming. Technology seemed to be offering us solutions before we even knew we had a problem. The products of pop culture almost never dwelled on dystopia or decline. Air travel was about as dangerous as bus travel. Acid rain and the hole in the ozone layer were problems of the decade before that seemed to have been fixed, and climate change was still called global warming and was not nearly so front and center in how people talked about the future. All in all, the 90s were a pretty solid decade. When you went to a rave, which were mostly all underground then, you were taught about the responsibility of researching drugs on Erowid. Music gigs where smartphones weren't a thing and everyone just enjoyed the moment. Not being contactable, and it was okay. If anyone wanted to talk to me, they would either have to call the landline, come to my house hoping I was home, or just wait until the next time they saw me. Being able to afford a decent 1BR apartment on the top floor of a building in a nice, trendy neighborhood of Seattle on $28,000 per year. My rent was $550 per month for several years. I miss getting a new album from a band, in cassette form, popping it into my Walkman and just exploring my neighborhood listening to the same songs over and over. Now with music streaming services and access to all of the music ever created, I actually almost never listen to new music. And when I do, I feel silly listening to it over and over. Even songs I like these days, I rarely remember the words to, and I never even remember track titles. It used to be, if I got a Green Day album, I listened to it until I memorized all of the track names and all of the lyrics. Simpler times and more free time, I guess. Listening to music on the radio. It was much easier to listen to new music when I wasn't really in control of the music I listened to. Now I'm one of those people with the same playlist with few songs that never gets really updated. I miss being a little more detached from everything. Yeah, technology was booming, but there was a sense of independence that I feel like a lot of kids don't have anymore. I feel like growing up in the middle-class US in the 90s had the best of both worlds. I was able to play video games and all that stuff, but I still had the freedom of my mom not knowing where I was at every second of the day when I was out in the woods with my friends or playing somewhere. I also miss the whole sense of being proud to be a kid, if that makes sense, where the divide between childhood and adulthood was not a thin line. I mean that in the sense of we had shows like Recess, and the Kids' Unwritten Code of Honor, and we had celebrities who were just for us. I do think that today's culture, especially with social media, has muddled the line between childhood and adulthood. I don't think it's bad, and I don't mean it to come off in a Holden Caulfield kind of way, and I'm sure that Gen Z is having and had fantastic childhoods too. I just think that kids today are thrust into maturity a lot faster than us 90s kids were. Pre-social media mindset. It seems nowadays, it's bringing in more negativity than positive. Also, social media influencers weren't a thing. Saturday morning TV. Affordable housing and the non-existence of social media. Tamagotchis. The original Jolt Cola. Not knowing Cosby was such a piece of shit. Being young and relatively healthy. The music. It felt original, creative and heartfelt. Today, for me, music feels packaged. It's just another product being sold to a consumer. Don't get me wrong, great music still exists. You just gotta look real hard for it. Not like the 90s. Great original music was everywhere. The fact that you had to gather with friends to hang around and start conversations, not just use your phone and text the whole time. Making plans with other people. Ubiquitous cell phone ownership and usage has made everything very on the fly. Just hanging out with people required legit planning. There was no such thing as, let me call so and see where they're at, because if they answer was anything other than sitting by the phone waiting for your call, then you were out of luck. But it meant that those interactions were much more deliberate and meaningful. You looked forward to those meetups. We don't make plans for the small stuff anymore. We just fish for interest in the moment, and maybe someone is bored and will stop by. In some ways it's much more convenient, but that convenience has taken something away from the quality of the experience. Paying $23 for a CD. Yes, it sucked because it was so expensive, but it really made you want to dive into the experience. My grandpa. Movies. A lot my favorite movies are mid-sized thrillers from the 90s. A lot of big actors, but not huge spectacles. That segment is dying out. You have huge blockbusters for international markets, some prestige period pieces, comedies and indies. And then there are TV shows. But the sort of Harrison Ford's wife is missing. Ogden films are severely lacking these days. Stupid and mentally unstable people shouted on street corners, not social media, and they were ignored. The sense of security resulting from the collapse of the Soviet Union and 9/11 not having happened yet. Airports. I miss how chill and cool airports were. Watching the plane leave after hugging my parents goodbye or waiting at the window watching it dock knowing someone you were waiting for was about to get off. I also miss AOL chat rooms. Going into chat rooms that had a bunch of teens going wild and meeting people in there. It was really cool. Honestly, everything. Ranging from that first day when I watched Friends to the day when Eminem topped the Billboard that would 2000s era, but I'll never forget the small television and Walkman and the 90s fashion sense. I miss the days everybody was trying be different, which so ironic now because now if you aren't in sync with what people are today then you are behind and stuff. It was such a carefree era. I loved my teens. No fucking cell phones. No fucking email. Leave me the fuck alone when I am not at work. Bradley Nowell, Kurt Cobain, Tupac, Biggie, Big L. Standing out front of Electronics Boutique to watch the Final Fantasy VII trailers while waiting for the game to be released. This is a collect call from, "Hey mom, it's me, pick me UP. Would you like to accept the charges?" Being happy. I don't think I have been truly happy without a care since 1997. So be Elements drinks. As weird as it sounds. Boredom. Now I have an endless supply of shit to keep my mind occupied. I never find myself wandering out for the sake of finding something to do. Trying to call everyone in my book to find someone to hang out with it. I think part of the problem is that the endless supply of distractions just aren't all that satisfying. They're rarely worth remembering or talking to people about. I don't really feel like I'm living. Just existing. No Facebook. The lack of social media and feeling more mentally free. Kids going outside and doing shit. When I was a kid, every day was a new adventure with my friends. We'd go on bike rides, play in the creek, go hiking in the woods, and run from the neighborhood bullies. I have an 8-year-old niece that does absolutely nothing. She doesn't know how to ride a bike, and spends her summers at home playing on a tablet or watching TV. Most kids her age do the same shit. No one goes outside or has a social life anymore. Seriously, what happened? Sometimes I miss the internet from the 90s. It was less stressful, if that makes sense. The excitement of watching a TV show with your friends at a certain time, and if you missed it, you missed it. Thanks for watching. See you later.